that you have sent to us and give you our assessment of sort of where they're strong, where they might need some improvement, where you might want to rethink them. I'm also going to talk in just a tiny bit of detail before we get started. I'm going to go back to the goals that I think that you should be focusing on for your book cover. And then also, I'm not going to read every word on the slide, but I also want to show you the questions for a typical creative brief. I would encourage you to send me an email if you want the slides. The third slide on this deck happens to be the creative brief that we use when we're working with authors. Frankly, I think it could probably be expanded a little bit, but it'll show you how much thought you need to put into this, whether you do it yourself or hire someone to do it for you. Aurora's got a quick question. She says, here, are you recording these? I have to go work shortly, and I'd love to see them later. Aurora, absolutely. They are recorded. About 24 hours from right now, you should receive a link in an email link that'll let you know how you can rewatch the webinar. So appreciate you coming, and sorry you have to leave early. Okay, so let's get started. I'm joined today by Chris Moyer. He's got his MFA and does a lot of our book layouts and book cover designs. And Chris, do you want to give us a little more background? Sorry, I didn't put your headshot up here on the front page with me. I ran out of time putting all of the books in the presentation.
It's okay. No one wants to see that anyway. Firstly, hello to everybody. Please be patient with me. It's my first one. Yeah, I completed an MFA in fiction writing, actually, a little while ago. But before that, worked for various small publishers and also individuals I do lots of book layouts, lots of ebook conversions, that sort of thing, and lots of cover designs. Just started doing probably 5 or 6 years ago.
Okay, fantastic. So I want to just remind everybody real quick of the goals for your book cover. I talk about these a lot, but I think they're worth just revisiting very quickly. Every fiction book cover, I think, has 3 important goals, and if you have a nonfiction book, excepting, of course, narrative nonfiction, there's a 4th goal. So let's talk about those real quick. So first of all, I want the image or the visual on your book cover to stop the eye. The book cover is going to be the most important thing on your Amazon, the most important first thing on your Amazon book sales page and anywhere else online that you're selling your book. It's got to actually absolutely grab the browser's attention. So they sort of stop and say, oh, I'm interested in that. What's that all about? Next, I want your book cover, if you strip off all the text, to shout out at me, what is your genre? This might be a little less important in literary fiction, but for genre fiction and for nonfiction, I would say it's absolutely critical. And that's because your reader wants confirmation, your browser wants confirmation right away that the book they've happened to glance at is actually one in a category or genre that they're interested in. Also, your book cover needs to absolutely convey to the browser, to the shopper, to the potential reader, that this is a professionally produced book. You've had it professionally edited. You've had it professionally laid out. You've had it's in all respects, this book is as good or better than any book from a traditional publisher. Now, I don't actually care whether you've had all those things done professionally, but the idea here is that your book cover needs to telegraph that those things have been done professionally and that your book is going to be a good read for that reason. And there's also some evidence out there that says, hey, if the package that my words come in, my book cover, is good, people will be more inclined to think positively about my book before they've even read it, and therefore more inclined to write a good review, which is something that we all want as writers. And then if you've written a nonfiction book, there's one extra goal I want you to think about at the end, which is I want you to put your benefit promise on the front of your book. Of course, your benefit promise is lose 40 pounds in 40 days, or have better luck finding a life mate, or whatever your nonfiction book topic happens to be about. Now, if you've written a narrative nonfiction book, and I actually have some examples that you all sent me, I would actually dispose of this goal. I don't think for personal memoirs, unless it's a book on curing cancer, that you really want, you really need to have a benefit promise. Now, I promised a creative brief. We talk about creative brief all the time when we're preparing to create a book cover for someone, and it's nothing more than a series of questions. And they're probing, they're piercing, they make you think. I'm not going to read all the questions on this slide. I'm happy to send them to anyone. You can take a screenshot if you want to. But at a bare minimum, the answers to these questions are what you need to know and convey to whoever is doing your book cover for you. Even if you're going to end up doing it yourself, you want to go through the exercise of answering all of these questions as thoroughly and completely and truthfully as you can, so that whoever's putting the effort into making your book cover look professional, they're well prepared to do so. Now, I want this to be an interactive session. Of course, it's already started out being interactive because at least 15 or 16 of you have sent me your book covers, which I thank you for very much. And I want to tell you that Chris and I are not, this isn't a singing talent show where we're going to rip apart your book covers. That you have a book cover, that you actually have or are finishing a book, puts you well ahead of most writers, including me, and you should feel good about that.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to point out the areas where we think you've done some things well, and areas where we think that you need to maybe reevaluate or make some improvements. So we're going to be gentle, and you are welcome to throw a question up in the question box, whether the book cover that we are looking at is yours or not. And if we bring your book cover up and you want to real quickly send a question chat that says, hey, this is a YA a romance, or this is a science fiction book, or if it doesn't seem to be apparent to you, your books will have some context. People just don't come across them in the middle of the street without some context. So they might have found it by browsing through a particular section of the bookstore or the online bookstore, so that they know they're generally in the science fiction area. So there's always some context when you're looking at a book cover, but we want you to think as though there may be none. So don't be afraid to do that. And then, so I got my first note. Who out there will polish my children's book without a lot of front money? I published with a self-publisher. I'm not happy. I would like suggestions for the next book. Please, thanks. Okay, so that's from Sharon. We've got your book, and I know what you're talking about because we're going to look at that in a minute. Okay, so here's the first book I've got. I think it's from Peter Gilboy. I really like this image. I think it's very arresting. It leaves a lot of questions. So on the does it capture my eye standpoint, it absolutely captures my eye. Now, one of the things you need to think about when you're evaluating these book covers is that I've got them in a pretty large format on the screen here, right? So you can see them probably in more detail and bigger on your screen than you can in the typical Amazon page. So just remember that when you're evaluating your book design, shrink your book cover down so that it's the same size as the way a book cover displays for you on Amazon, and then reevaluate all the things that we're talking about. I think the image is good. I think the typography is good. I gave Peter a suggestion about that earlier. Chris, what do you think? Let's start with something that you think Peter's or his designer's done well here. Anything you would suggest for improvement?
I've got a lot, actually. It's an interesting coincidence. I just did the print layout for this book this week and read it. So coming from the standpoint of somebody who knows exactly what's in this book, in fact, I think that the image is particularly arresting. I'm trying to explain exactly kind of what it does for me, but there's, you can't see her eyes, you can't see the rest of her body. There's a mysteriousness about it that plays really well into the content of the book. There's kind of an illicit, vibe to it in some ways, and that is very appropriate for what the book's about. I think I like the kind of subtle gradient that he has on the text, actually. Lots of times I don't, but I think it spices it up just a little without being super noisy.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those where the main image is really taking center stage, which sometimes can be bad if it's not an effective image, but on this one I think that it is.
Mm-hmm. Now, what do you think about the aspect ratio? This seems exceptionally tall relative to its width to me, and I haven't changed the aspect ratio, the length versus height, or the width versus height for any of these covers. I've put them up exactly as the author gave them to me.
It's actually, it might be right exactly on for Kindle.
Okay.
I don't know if he's doing an ebook. I know that he's doing a 6:9 print, and I think that at a glance we might have to adjust it when he goes to do that, but I would have to open it up and tinker with it to see for sure, but that doesn't look like 6:9 to me.
Yeah, it doesn't. It doesn't look like a 6:9 ratio to me either. So then what that tells me is that either he's planning on having some white space on either side, which I would say is a no-no, because it's going to be bracketed by further white space in Amazon. And this is a good example. This particular example, I think, is a good example of where there's a taste element here always when you're evaluating these. And my suggestion to Peter originally was, I wondered if the cover designer was trying to do something with a subtextual image underneath his typography. And if so, it wasn't working for me. But I see now what you're saying, it's more of a gradient from the M to the S. And if anything, I think it suggests, yeah, if anything, I think it suggests her, what's the right way to pronounce that word, her décolletage. So I think that I like it. I think it's a very good image. My concern, again, will only be the aspect ratio, and when I shrunk it down to size on the Amazon site, when I held it up to another book there, would I really be able to read Peter's title? Maybe not so important. I mean, would I be able to read his name? Not so important. But I really want to be able to read his title, Madeline's Kiss. And I would be worried when I shrunk it down if I would have that problem.
Yeah, that would be my only other concern, too, I think. And I think it's less of a concern than people kind of want to make it out to be, because usually the title is going to be displayed, by Amazon or whoever right under it. And
or right to the right of it, that's right.
Yeah, and you'll see, like a big puckered lips right there, which is enough to grab your attention, I think, next to other books. But yeah, it's always worth kind of shrinking it down and looking, just to have some idea,
Yeah. Now, let me ask you a question, Chris, while we're talking about aspect ratio. I know that actually Amazon, each of the services, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple Kobo, and the Google Play Store, all have slightly different recommendations or rules about either file size or aspect ratio or longest number pixels on the longest side of your image. When you are doing book covers, do you ever suggest to authors that they consider choosing an aspect ratio for their image that might be more square and takes up more of the relative page, even though it might not match the exact cover of their physically printed book? You ever get into that discussion?
Not that often. I would love to, but that's there's like a process issue in there, and that normally people that I work with fall into two categories: people that have picked images before they ever talk to us and are very set. This is what they want, and we're going to give them what they want. We're not going to argue with them, even if we don't necessarily think it's the best way to go. Or they kind of have a vague idea of the kind of imagery they want, and they don't want to be hands-on about it at all. They just want to say, all right, go pick something, show me 5 options or something like that. And so then I'm the one picking, and then I might pick that, but it's not a conversation to have with clients.
Yeah. So back to this, I really like it. I like this one. I think this is a good-looking book cover. Aspect ratio notwithstanding. Let's look at another one by Peter. This is The Whole Truth, and a psychological novel of suspense. So what Peter's doing with his books as his, I don't know if it's a subtitle. I don't know if he's entering in his metadata as a subtitle, but he's clearly telegraphing on the front of the book what the book is about. So he may be doing twice the work, right? If in theory I should be able to strip away all the text and then figure out what the genre is, Peter is worried that that may not be possible with his book, so he's telling you what the genre is underneath. What do you think about that, Chris? Is that a good use of space, or 6 one, half dozen the other? What's your opinion?
I kind of think you can take it or leave it. I wouldn't call it a bad thing or a good thing necessarily. If it were distracting from something else or taking away like very important space, I would say get rid of it. But I don't think it's doing that in that case.
Yep. And sorry, I missed this earlier. I had my window closed. Peter asked a question. He said, "What do you mean there will be white around it on Kindle?" Let me go back and describe what I mean, Peter. It actually applies to both of your books. If there are some authors who will say, "I want my book cover to be white, and I want my text to be black. I want a very bold black and white contrast," and then we can throw some images there in the middle of it. And what happens is when you take a book cover that does not have an embedded frame around it, and it's white, and you place it up on Amazon, Amazon's default background color currently is white. So the edges of your book disappear because your book then bleeds off into the rest of the Amazon page, and it's essentially a tremendous waste of space for you because it makes your effective image and your effective book cover look much smaller than it really is. And what I was saying about this image is, if indeed you've designed this with a white border, or in this case maybe a transparent border on the right and left side, then you've given up some of your visual space to the Amazon white background. And that may not be what you've done here, but that's what I was trying to point out with the comment about white border. And we've got actually a couple of other ones in here, I think, that are going to suffer from that problem, and we'll talk about it again. So I'm looking at this cover. It's a good, strong image. The only thing in here that concerns me a little bit is the burned shadow behind the whole truth.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's necessary, and I'm not certain what it's doing for me in the image.
Yeah, there are a couple ways that you could probably tweak that a little bit. I think that probably from the artist standpoint, that's going to have two purposes. One is just to make the orange pop more, right? Like you can see in the psychological novel, the suspense line, he has a drop shadow there too. But it's not as deep. It's not as far from the text. It just kind of helps the text stand out a little bit. Especially important in that role because the light blue is similar to the background. So I think if he brought that in a little bit closer, it would be a little bit neater. But also probably they just want to, I don't know, play around with kind of the visual cues that you take from shadowy things, right?
Yeah.
Which there's potentially better ways to do that. Like this is a kind of automatically Photoshop generated drop shadow. You could also go in and draw a shadow yourself that looks a little more natural if you wanted to do that, which might be a little better. It might not. You would have to, look at it side by side and see.
Yeah. Now, it looks to me as though we've got three completely different fonts here. Having a little trouble distinguishing the subtitle. I mean, the subtitle versus the capped author name. But it looks to me as though he's got three different fonts. What do you think about mixing up lots of fonts on your book cover?
I like 2 max usually. But the subtitle and the main title are kind of close enough that it doesn't like jump out at me like I wouldn't see this on the shelf and go ugh. But you could do that subtitle in one of the other 2 predominant fonts, and I think it would maybe be a little more unified. But again, that's like a kind of a quibbling thing for me.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. So we're getting different opinions. Aurora says that she has concerns that the font might be hard to read when you shrink this down on Amazon. You might completely lose the subtitle and may lose the author's name, and it might even be hard to read the title when you shrink this down on Amazon. I tend to agree.
That's probably true. For the bottom 2 pieces of text, I would think that that's probably the case.
Okay. If we stripped away all the text, do you think that we would get that this is a psychological thriller or psychological suspense novel?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a hard thing to communicate anyway, but I think that you get suspense, you get mystery. Usually people aren't out in the woods in the snow if everything's going great, I guess. I don't know. It's something that's
nice
looking over her shoulder.
Yeah, right. And one of the things that concerns me a little bit is that elbow sure is far away from that shoulder relative to her torso length. I wonder what's going on there. And it's turned at a kind of an awkward angle. I don't know. It looks like it was stretched a little with, and of course we don't see the other part of her hidden by the trees. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. Okay, the official fitness book, Scared Sitless. I probably need this book pretty badly. So if I could just finish building my treadmill desk. So this is obviously a nonfiction book. It looks to me as though we've got the benefit promise right on the front. Work happier, lose weight, live longer. If you read my book, you will fill in the benefit promise. Work happier, lose weight, and live longer. I also, of course, when I first read this title, like many of you I may have, or like some of you may have, I inserted an extra H, which I'm sure was on purpose, right, in the second word of the title. And so I like that. There's a little play on there. It made me stop and go look back. Now, I'm not a huge fan of black book covers with big colored fonts on them. What's your take on, using black as the canvas for your book cover?
Don't generally love it. This is at least more of a slate than like a pitch black, which I do think there's a bit of a difference. It makes the color pop, right? But that's kind of all it does on this. It depends. Of course, every cover's different, and I've done dark book covers for sure. But yeah, don't love that. But with this particular shade of green, I think helps it out a lot.
Yeah, the green looks sick to me.
Oh, really? I kind of like it.
No. I mean, it's potentially conveying that you may be sick, and that hopefully not that reading this book will make you sick, but that this book deals with elements of disease or elements of sickness, which is probably on target. I don't know if that's exactly what Larry's trying to convey with us, but definitely as far as images that grab your eye, I would definitely say that for me, the image that grabs my eye is that play on words title.
Yeah.
It's big enough. It covers the whole book. I don't care about the stick figures. It doesn't really matter whether I like them or not. They're so small as to be inconsequential. But definitely the title positively makes me stop and reread it and say, did I just read that on a book cover? This polite society, how can that be? And then, of course, I realized that it was my own terrible mind inserting that extra H. I like the fonts. I like the composition. I like the benefit promise. I guess the only thing that worries me is whether black and green conveys, well, I should say it differently. How will it stand out on a physical bookshelf, and how would it stand out in the list of top 100, paid or free books within its genre in Amazon? So I'd say that's a pretty good cover. And then I think Larry also sent the complete print cover layout. The print cover layout, which of course, it shows you the back cover first, then the spine, then the right cover or the front cover. And I think it's well done. He's got room for the UPC in the bottom right. He's got a credibility headshot. He's got his credentials next to his headshot, and a quick description on the book, which hopefully we won't read it here, and of course you can't see it on Amazon until you do the open now, but hopefully the selling text on the back gets right to the problem and right to why this is the unique solution for it. So I'd say good and well thought out. Anything else? Oh, well, I really love this, by the way, Larry. I think it's fantastic that you've got a forward by Joan Vernikos, who I've never heard of, but that doesn't matter because she's the former director of NASA Life Sciences, and that's all you need to know about Joan. So I don't know how you got that, but fantastic. Way to go.
Yeah, I like that too. I think that's an interesting kind of side point that just to be able to have that extra line of text forward by Joan or any other kind of thing that's not just the title and your author name is really helpful.
Yeah.
Like people just neglect it, and we ask clients too sometimes, like, hey, do you want to put one extra line here or a quote from any reviewer or anything like that? And they'll just say, not really. But sometimes it's really, really useful, even just for filling negative space in some places.
Right.
Yeah, no, I like it. What was I going to say? Oh, I wonder if the spot, I wish I could show you my cursor, but the barcode space, my only thing would be that I would hope, and this is probably the case, that the designer made sure that is exactly the size of the barcode. Otherwise, I don't know why you wouldn't just slap it on top of the kind of creamish, whitish, yellowish box.
Why wouldn't you
extend it all the way down? You know what I'm saying?
Extend the cream over and then put the barcode on it. Got it.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think that probably just is the right dimensions.
Yeah. Now, of course, the forward probably won't play when you shrink this down to Amazon thumbnail size, and you may lose your benefit promise, but that'll be, again, as you pointed out before, in the subtitle, I hope. But otherwise, I think a good cover, good print cover as well.
I think so, too.
Yep. And here's Greg Dew's book, Subtropical High, a Florida Cocaine Caper. I'm assuming that the Florida Cocaine Caper or Caper series, that this is part of a series. I haven't talked with Greg about whether he's got a series and whether they all follow this sort of same style. My concern about this cover is that the image is A, too small. It's B, it looks like it's been chopped out of a different background. And it looks like for some reason she's actually a potted plant growing the palm tree. I would actually probably do something different with the palm tree. Although I suppose that the way the palm tree is laid out, you could interpret that to be, I don't know about these things, I see them in the movies, but a pile of cocaine, I guess. I don't know. I'm guessing at what you're doing there. But I'm also worried about the way the three horizontal color bars are arranged. The break between the first and the second one doesn't do anything for me. And of course, when we shrink this down, we won't be able to see that Florida cocaine caper at all. But I think that maybe that there are some things that we can improve on this book cover. I do notice it has a very nice aspect ratio, right? He's using the designer here, the author here is using a good amount of horizontal width within what's allowed by Amazon in terms of aspect ratio. What do you think about this cover, Chris?
A lot of things. Okay, so one thing that I think is good that I would draw attention to, firstly, is I do like the color palette, and I think it's bright and catchy in its way. And also, there is kind of a little-known, I guarantee you, Gregory knows this, like super subgenre of fiction that is kind of Florida-based. Guys like Carl Hyacin, there's a lot going on in this cover that you'll see across covers of those kinds of dudes. And I think that is definitely working to his advantage because people who like those authors that are using Florida as their canvas, they're going to flip through Amazon and recognize this as part of that, which is great. I wish I did a cover for a book similar to this just yesterday. I wish I could share it with you guys for comparison purposes. So a couple things that I think that there is probably a more dynamic way of having those color bars split up. I can think of things visually that it's hard for me to explain. That line of Florida cocaine caper, this is like a pet peeve of mine, but it's obviously crunched.
Yeah, or stretched, one of the two.
Yeah, it's
flattened or stretched.
Which you won't see it on professionally published covers, generally speaking, and I would guess that that's to try and make it line up with the word subtropical, but there are other better ways to do that. You can change the kerning on the fonts, you can make it a little bigger, things like that. So that would be a red flag to me. I love the orange, actually. I'm kind of hooked on orange these days. I think it's interesting. I don't know if I like it or dislike it, that the word high has a different slant. You can see it's kind of bending to the left a little bit.
It is bending to the left, isn't it?
Subtropical, which is, I don't know, kind of fun, but also different. I don't know. You almost have to. I don't know if other people would necessarily notice it, or if I do, because I do this a lot. So it maybe isn't fulfilling its purpose as much as it could be if you're trying to kind of get some dynamicism to that title.
Right.
But it's definitely an interesting thing that I notice.
Yeah, I could, and it may even be leaning out toward us as much as it's leaning to the left.
Yeah. I think it is something like that. I'm sure whoever made it knows exactly what,
right.
How they transformed it. But the other big thing, is you mentioned earlier the hula girl, if that's right. That you can definitely see the white border around her from where she's been taken from something else, which is just that's just a Photoshop kind of issue. But if you were to zoom in on that, you would be able to see some major artifacting around her edges.
Yeah, you can see that underneath her leg for sure.
Yeah,
the ziggies.
Yeah. You see it pretty bad at a bigger screen, and it might also affect how it looks when it gets printed. The whole thing might be a little blurrier as a result.
Yeah,
so.
the print on demand. That's right. And Peter's got a comment. He says, "What if she had a gun or a rifle in her hand instead of a ukulele?" I think that's an interesting comment.
That
and
would
Jenny
be
says,
pretty cool.
Yeah, or a machine gun or Tommy gun. And Jenny says it looks more like a mistake, too subtle. I think maybe. I think she's talking about the lean and the high. Just explain for us. Just take a moment and explain the concept of kerning. I think that there's, if you really went crazy, there's some kerning improvements that you could do here, maybe around the eye and high.
Yeah.
But tell our audience what kerning is and why do I care?
Absolutely. I'm referring to the space between letter forms or specific characters. So actually, can you flip back to one of Peter's covers for me?
Mm-hmm.
Because they had really good kerning, I noticed. Yeah, like see, for
Madeline's
instance,
Kiss has great kerning.
yeah, it's that looks like it might be Lee Gothic that shrunk together a little more than it otherwise would be. His title, his author name, Peter Gilboy. There's extra space between those characters, which makes it line up evenly with the M and the S in Madeline's Kiss, which gives it a nice symmetry. But also, it's just attractive. You know, that's one of the big things that we think about when we're messing with the typography of a cover, is how we're going to use that space. And you can flip back now anytime.
Yep.
In this book, it looks like the kerning is all just kind of set.
Yeah. Wherever the
default
is when he types
and
it.
that very top line, a Florida cocaine caper, rather than being spaced out or condensed in that more natural-looking way, it looks like it's just sort of stretched across.
Yeah. But as you point out when you got started there, what Greg is probably tapping into, and it's very smart, and I would recommend all authors do this. He's tapping into the norms in his genre or his subgenre. So, whether it's I've got to have a picture of the Pentagon, a gun, a helicopter, a black helicopter, and a parachute, or I need to have a spaceman doing an EVA outside of a spaceship orbiting an asteroid. Whatever the norms are in your genre, know what they are, as Greg has done here, and if it's going to help the sales of your book, work within them. And so, having these bars like this color palette, the imagery he's got may very well be the product of some deep research that he's done in his genre, which is good. And
that's his biggest strength.
Yep. Okay, I like this cover a lot from J.C. Anderson. This is book 4, The Breakdown. It's got a pretty arresting image. I'd hate to be that eyeball that's getting bracketed by the lightning, but that's really where the first thing I look at. And I think, I can't tell, but there's something, it looks as though there's another image inside that eyeball, or there's something, whether it's another fork of lightning, or there's something going on in there. It's a little bit puzzling. So the image is not quite complete for me, but it does make me sort of stop and look, for sure, at the book cover. Now here, we've got 1, 2, 3. It looks to me again as though we have 3 different font choices here: the title, the subtitle, and then the author name. It looks like the author name and the subtitle are the same, but the book 4 seems to be in a different font from the subtitle itself. So that bothers me a little bit. I'd want to sort of knock that down to just 2 fonts.
Well, what it is it's the same font, but it's in small caps.
Oh, yes, you're right. Yeah, it is. You're right. Sorry, my mistake. So this is 2 fonts, so it's fine. What do you think about the predominantly black cover, the borders, and a very dim image on the cover?
I don't know. I don't hate it on this one. I'm thinking right now, and this is the first time I've seen this one, I'm thinking more about the role of the various text. For example, if I didn't know that this was part of a series, I would immediately assume that Holly Goforth is the author's name.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I almost said that when I introduced the book.
Yeah, so I mean that's not necessarily a bad thing, but it might be working against her purposes as well. You wouldn't, I think at the thumbnail size, you wouldn't see book 4, so you would maybe just see the wrong author name and then the breakdown. I don't know if it's that doesn't work against her if the previous 3 books have a good readership already. If they're looking for or waiting for book 4, then that's exactly what you want to project.
They want to know if this main character is the role is being reprised and the story continues, and leading off with the main character's name is almost more important than the title because you're in a series.
But to answer your other question, which I didn't answer properly, it doesn't really bother me actually, because I think that it all goes together well, and the red is enough, I think, to make it visible. I mean, this is you're saying to me, I have no idea what this book is about, but that Holly Goforth font especially is absolutely old school horror. I'm talking
Screaming
like
vampire.
70s, 80s kind of horror. So the dark, creepy vibe of it all, works well for that.
Now, so that's interesting. So let's talk about that for a minute. The font choice here, and let's assume it's the first. So I'll make a couple of broad assumptions. My first assumption is that JC has done her whole series in a common-looking composition and related look. So each of the 4 books is going to, and I'll make that assumption because if she hasn't, she should. So that it's very easy for me to identify them whether on a bookshelf or on an electronic bookshelf. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to make that assumption, and assuming that's so, and assuming that this would be the first book or this is the first time I've seen the series. Do you think that this choice of font, the Holly Goforth font that they're using here, is it telegraphing to me that maybe this book is set in the 70s or 80s, or is it just a sort of a throwback to when that font was more common among book titles?
That's interesting. That's actually a super interesting question. Because I guess it would be different for everybody. If I saw that, like if I saw it on a bookstore shelf especially, I would think it's an old book. I wouldn't think it's set in the 70s or 80s. I would just think that, that's when it was printed.
It's from the 70s or 80s.
Yeah, sure. But I don't know if other people would their mind would go differently. But I think I'm really, just because of my work, I'm pretty aware of fonts in general and kind of what's new and what's old and those things. And I think about a lot of things in terms of that. I don't know that your average reader does. I think you pick up on it more than anybody thinks they do.
Sure. Well, so that's an important sort of subliminal point here, which is your font choice may be communicating to your prospective readers whether your book is new or old. Not this, and I don't mean the setting. I mean when it was published. And so you've got to think about that when you're working with your designer about what you're saying about how recently you published your book by your choice of font. Christine had a question, and I think I answered, but I'm not certain. So I'll ask you, Kerning, K-E-R-N-I-N-G? Okay, great, got it. I think that's what I can message back to Christine. Okay, so good resting image here. I like it. Let's look at the next one. Okay, this is by Tai Wong, and the book's title, I'm probably not going to pronounce it correctly, is Orcanus. Orcanus 10, I believe, or Orcanus X. My first concern with the cover is that it's not clear to me why this, I'm going to assume it's a killer whale, is pointing down screen. It's not clear to me whether that's a real animal that's been cartoonized a little bit, or a picture that's been processed using Photoshop, or whether that's the orca is a cutout. If it is an orca, I'm not a marine biologist, so I'm not certain. But overall, I'd say one of the other issues that worries me about this cover is that I can't read the author's name at all. I see that Ty is using his middle name as part of his author name, and I'm wondering if, and this is a sort of a brand decision that Ty needs to make for himself, whether having simply the middle initial might be better because if you want your author name on one line, it gives you more space so that your font can be bigger. And the title, frankly, especially the X at the end of it, is very hard for me to read in that busy, choppy water. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I would agree with a lot of the things you said. I would bet any amount of money that that's a photo of an orca that has been run through a Photoshop sketch filter, not sketch, one of the similar ones.
Mm-hmm.
Which, you know, the cool thing is that it does give it some style, and it's pretty in a sort of abstract way. But that's all it does for me, really. Yeah, I'm more concerned with the fonts. Like you said, I can't read the author name very well. I think that you could make, if you're gonna, sorry, I'm rambling. If you are going to play with the text to the degree that you are, like for instance making the first half of Orcanus black and the second half white to kind of reflect the coloring of orcas, you might as well just kind of let that take center stage a little bit more. I mean, you could have all of that text be huge over the top of this orca and still get the same effect because the orca is already not super clear, so you don't have to worry about kind of obscuring it. But yeah, having the X.
How about having him swim straight down?
Yeah.
He's swimming toward my knees. Should I be worried? I don't know.
Yeah, I think that. I mean, I don't love that for sure. I would bet that that is completely a practical decision that he made. Like this is the picture that he wanted to use for whatever reason. It's the one that he found that he had the rights to or something like that, and it's landscape-oriented, and so he just rolled with it that way, would be my guess, because that's how a lot of these decisions get made.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, this is Joseph emailed me. He noted when he sent this to me, he said, first of all, it's not my final cover. He said, second of all, these images are all from Google. This is just sort of an FPO. This is so what Joseph is sort of saying here is this is the kind of idea I might give to my book cover designer and say, run with that. So a couple things I'd say, just a reminder, I'm sure Joseph knows this, but everyone else should be absolutely positive of this as well. When you go to Google Images and you pull images off of Google Image, you can be 99.99% assured that you have no rights to use those images on your book cover whatsoever. And so, just go another way. Nothing wrong with doing as Joseph has done here to communicate to a book cover designer the composition and the elements that you feel are important for your book cover. But do make sure that you understand you can't just go in and grab a picture and run it through a filter and call it your own. I would. It's pretty clear that that Joseph probably has some better ideas, or his designer can have some better ideas for his typography, so that when you shrink this book down, you can actually read his author name and you can read the title. I would say that the image he's suggesting for the mermaid is very arresting, because that's not your traditional mermaid. She's got a shark fin. I would be very afraid of that mermaid. So I think that's there's something to be said for that image as well.
Yeah, there's so much.
Any comments for Joseph?
Yeah, a bunch, actually. Okay, so firstly, yeah, the shark fin mermaid is rockin'. I would guess this seems like a super ambitious kind of idea that he has, because if I had to guess any of those images that are going to be somebody's going to have the rights to, it's going to be the mermaid one. It just looks like some like really hot digital work that somebody's done, and that's the sort of thing that's really, really hard to get a freelance cover designer to do well, if that's not kind of their specialty, or you don't have a huge budget, right? I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah.
When you see these kind of very intentionally, painstakingly customized, illustrated covers, lots of times those are from publishers that have big art departments that have people whose job that is. Getting somebody to do that from scratch is kind of tough, frankly. Like it takes a long time,
right.
And you have to pay people for their hours.
So let's talk about that for a second. Let's talk about the difference between a I'll throw out a number, a $200 book cover and a $2,000 book cover.
Right.
A $200 book cover goes to iStock Photo, and very quickly, plenty of book designers tell me this, the more help, the more book direction, the better the creative brief from my author, the less time I spend searching through iStock Photo to find the image that I'm going to buy on their behalf and then manipulate, or images, on their book cover. That's the $200 book cover. The $2,000 book cover is where I go buy the rights to a mermaid with a shark fin from DeviantArt, and maybe even commission a little extra something on it. And then also pay a book cover designer to incorporate that paid-for image, that commissioned image, into the rest of what I'm doing. So I just want everybody to understand that when you see book cover design offers, you have to know what you have to set your expectations accordingly and understand what a budget can or can't get you.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
Go ahead, Chris. I interrupted. You
No,
had more comments about this for Joseph.
That's to one of my biggest points, though, which is that lots of times we get people who have super specific, often really kind of overloaded ideas about what they want. They want a motorcycle jumping over a bridge and there's an explosion behind it, and background are these 10 people watching, and they have to look exactly this way, and it's just like oh my gosh, how am I supposed to do all this for you?
On a $200 budget.
Right, or they want a really specific photo is the thing that I get a lot that is troublesome, and it's like, well, you haven't paid a photographer to go out and take that very specific photo. I can search through 5,000 stock photos all afternoon long, but I'm probably not even going to find it. If he gets this commissioned, a new from scratch image like this, I would recommend trying to keep the mermaid so that this is a very technical thing for you to consider, or practical rather, so that the border between the sky and the ocean is closer to the lower third of the cover, so that you have, at least half of that book is got that good night sky, and then you can pop your title over that,
right.
and you'll have all the space you need. You can still fit the submarine coming out that way off to her right. I would also say the hammer and sickle in the Department of Homeland Security, I don't know what they're going to do for me. I think it's just going to busy it up. I think your mermaid and submarine is going to look so cool if it's done right that you don't really need to kind of have the random symbols on there too.
Got it. Okay. Okay, good. Anything else about this one, Chris?
That's it.
Okay, let's take a look and see what we've got next here. Okay, I'm actually going to skip this one. This is one that we did. I don't know if you did this or not, Chris, but
I didn't.
Was this one of yours?
No, it wasn't.
Very arresting image. Okay, so we'll move past that one. Okay, here's one by commenter George Horak of the Ocean Chronicles. Probably the biggest issue I've got with this is when I shrink this down to Amazon size, I'm going to lose whatever that imagery is and whatever it means. I just know that I'm going to, whatever it is, and so all I'm going to end up with is a cover that's blue on the top half and black on the bottom half, and there's no way I'll be able to read his author name, and I'll probably be able to read his title name, maybe. But I happen to know that I believe this is a nonfiction book about seagoing adventures, and I'm just wondering if, and I think it's written in a narrative fictional format, so narrative nonfiction format, so it doesn't need a benefit promise. But what would you recommend that George think about doing to improve this?
Yeah, I actually have a big soft spot in my heart for the kind of minimalist illustrated style like this, even though it does have its risks. One thing I would probably say, you have this good dark, foreboding ocean kind of space at the bottom, but you might go ahead and let Ocean Chronicles take up more of that if that was on 2 lines and spaced so that it was a nice block that fit across it. I don't think it would detract from what you're doing there, but would still make it nice and bold at the smaller sizes. Otherwise, yeah, there's really nothing you can do about the fact that at the smaller size you're going to kind of lose the nice subtlety of it. That's just really a gamble that's yours to make. basically.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's an intentional choice. I like the subtlety. If I saw it big, I would like it like I like it right now, and would respect that. But would everybody? I don't know. It's just, you know.
I just can't tell what the imagery is. That's my problem. I don't know what that is. I'm familiar with sailing in the water and the ocean, and I can't figure out. I mean, I've got a beam of light from above. I've got could be a shark fin.
Yeah, well, that's
sparkling in the water. I'm having trouble figuring out what it is.
I think it's supposed to be the silhouette of a sailboat, right? And that's like moon reflection shining from above. So we have like a twilight ocean, but perhaps that if between two of us, one of us takes that away and one of us is unclear, then that would suggest that, you know, that could be made clearer.
Yeah. One quick question about the author name here on this book. I'm aware that I'm not aware if Commodore is a rank or is used in the military, but I know I'm almost positive it is not a at least U.S. governmental title. So is it do we think that for a nonfiction book about seagoing stories, do we think it's important that George include that title and play it up? Commodore.
I think it doesn't hurt. It totally depends on what the book is, but Commodore is generally a Navy rank superior to captain.
Oh, okay. All right, great.
So I think if you were into, you know, sailing and naval adventures and things like that, then you would take that seriously.
Yeah, it'd have some weight for you. Okay, good, got it. Okay, next. I'm not certain. I actually contacted the author here just to reconfirm that this was a book cover. I think this is the beginning of some image thinking that she's using about a book cover. I would certainly say that the image of I'm going to assume that's a potbelly pig on the right, is a part of the story or is a character in the story. I don't know. It certainly is arresting, though, and that could be a razorback. I can't quite tell because I don't know that very well. But I think if you're going to use it as a book cover or as an element in your book cover, I would say a couple things about it. The first is see if you can get a better image than that. I'm worried a little bit about the quality and how that's going to work on a print cover book. Most modern cameras are taking images, as long as you don't try to blow them up too much and cut things out of them, are taking images at more than enough pixel depth so that they can be used on a print cover. But I would see if I could get some better framing, and because you can always crop later as long as it's in camera or in the picture. It's hard to make it up when it's not. As an arresting image for a book cover, any comments, Chris?
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you said. I think it's definitely attention-getting. And if the book is about, you know, my life with my pig, then, yeah, it's good for that. I would definitely try and get something clearer and more high quality. I can see, you know, you can see kind of the pixelated stuff, especially on her cheeks, and the red and blue of her clothing, which for print would definitely, it just gets worse in print generally.
Yeah.
It's just going to look splotchy. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm done.
Yeah, Brenda's got a great question actually about this image. She's got a question here. She says this is about a true story about the relationship here between these two. And Brenda says, what do you think about, and I've only seen it done once by a guy I actually follow, what do you think about a book cover with no words whatsoever as the book cover image for my ebook only? So I'm not talking about print for a minute, but just an ebook cover, no text whatsoever, because frankly, all the text you need to know is on the right-hand side about an inch away on the screen. What do you think about that approach?
I think I like it. Actually, I like it more for print.
Oh, really?
Yeah, even though I know that that's probably bad business. Always certain authors could pull it off, certain ones couldn't, I guess. you'd have to have a strong marketing arm so people know what to look for.
Right.
But I think it could definitely work. And what I really appreciate is just the willingness to take a risk and to think outside the box, because I hear so much, this is how you do it right. And that artfulness that comes with that intentionality is definitely something to think about. My other thing about it, if you're going to do that, is that since it's landscape oriented, I'm trying to picture, how I would crop that and keep both faces in for it to be the right aspect ratio.
Yeah.
Which I don't really think you could.
I think you can go square in Amazon. In fact, almost positive that you can go square. But again, I think that you'd want to start with a larger image and then crop it down as you're sort of experimenting with the way you want it to compose it.
Well, because also
is already too cropped in camera.
Right. And also, it's because I think it's because it's it's a selfie, right? You can see that her arm extending. Even if you can go square for the catalog view in Amazon, then on the actual Kindle or iPad or whatever, then it's not going to fill your screen.
It'll be a bar at the top, black bar.
Yeah, which is, it's nice to avoid if you can. It's not like the biggest deal breaker in the world, but you want to use that.
What do you recommend for a standard aspect ratio for an ebook? Do you have a recommendation, or do you always say match the POD?
Well, honestly, we just give them different versions for every design or for every device. You can do, what is it exactly? I think it's 2 to 3 is your closest standard safe one. It used to be, they change every month is the problem. But if you get one from BookFuel, you'll get one that's exactly the dimensions for Kindle, exactly the dimensions for iPad, usually one that's for Nook Color, and then that iPad one is a 2 to 3 ratio that you can kind of use as a catch-all on other devices too.
Sure. Okay. Great. Okay. I've got 2 covers now by the writer Tulu. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. This is the first one, and the cover, I've expanded it so that I'm using max height on this image on this PowerPoint. And I'm just going to say, we've hit the hour mark. Now I committed to the folks who sent the cover that we would take a look at them. So we're going to keep going. If you have to drop off, Chris and I completely understand. But we've only got a few more to go, and I want to go ahead and get through them. So that at least if someone has to come back and watch the recording, they can get some input on their book cover.
Yeah.
And then Brenda Hethesy, thank you. Okay, so this book, the title of the book, I believe, is Why and How Women Are Exploited by Men Worldwide. Now, I did a little bit of research when Tulu sent this to me, and she is a motivational speaker. She speaks on a number of topics in this general category. It looks as though she's quite successful. She's got speaking engagements around the world. And so she sent 2 book covers. Let's look at this one first. The title of the book is Why and How Women Are Exploited by Men Worldwide. Now, I look at this cover, and I get the imagery. I think I get the imagery, and I like it. It certainly conveys to me, once I read the title, and that's a difficult concept to get across image-wise. But having said that, I am concerned that the title is unreadable. The title is actually on this book cover twice, once in the curvature on the top, and then again along the bottom with what I can't tell if that's a TM or not, or supposed to be a trademark symbol at the end or not. But I'm worried that the cover is that the title just isn't reading on the cover, especially when I knock this down to Amazon size. And it's also not clear to me, although, because I was very curious myself, that the author wants to identify herself by the name Tulu 2. And it might be that that's what she wants. On her website, it's mostly Tulu. So if when you're building your author brand, you want your author name to be Tulu 2, that's fine, but I wonder if there's some typography or some composition or color things we can do here, Chris, to suggest ways that might get the idea across better.
Yeah, okay, so what I would say about that, and I should say that I cheated and I Googled this one, and so I've seen from Facebook what it looks like in print, and what we can't see on your screen right now is that in print there's like an extra 2 inches of white space below this, what we see here. All right, so this is relevant to my comment.
Well, wait a minute. Just so you know, it could be that space was here, and that in my effort to expand it to show the visible screen, because it was white and there was nothing else on it, I floated off the bottom. So that could be my fault. Yeah.
Well, but that's okay. But so I mean, what I love about the image is, I don't know, the way that it interacts with the person looking at it, right? Like I see this and I think that those look like breasts, and like a shirt, and then my mind, is invited to ask, well, why is that the first place that my head went? Which
and then you read the title,
right? Oh yeah, which is precisely what she's trying to do with the book, and I think that's brilliant, and I love it, and I like that she got away with it with just this simple silhouette cartoonish shape. As opposed to putting a photo of cleavage up there and saying like, haha, gotcha, look, or whatever.
Right.
I wonder if she would lose anything by kind of taking now why and how women are exploited by men worldwide and just making it bigger, really breaking it into 2 lines. You could put it in the shirt, or you could make it in bigger block letters in that white space that's below, just to give it more readability. And I would suggest maybe doing the same thing with the author name somewhere.
Yeah.
It just kind of gets lost in the shuffle. I don't think that I mind, in this case, the title being on there twice, especially if one of them is a lot easier to read than the other. Just because, like you said, she's sort of playing a trick on us and saying, like, haha, made you read the title.
Right.
So I think there's, I'm willing to give it all kinds of leeway because there's a clever thought happening. Don't know if it's does.
Yeah. How about all of the? I'm worried that when this shows up on Amazon, that the top half and the bottom inch and the bottom, fifth 20% are gone. They're because it's on a white background on Amazon. They're lost. You without framing, you're gonna lose that. But maybe that's okay for this particular composition.
Yeah, I wonder. I would want to look. It's a good
Can you think
point,
of ways to frame it that might work better?
Yeah, probably. I mean, it could be as simple as, I don't know, letting the black extend all the way to the edges. Because that's the thing, too. Like, in the printed version, I'm sure it's the way on this, too. There is, like, an inch of white on the left and right-hand sides as well.
Oh, yeah, sure. Okay.
So it's kind of framed nicely in print. But you could, extend the black all the way down and all the way to the sides for digital. And you would still get the same image, but it would look a little more cohesive. And then you would have to put the bottom title in white within the black. But I think that would work just as well, and it would be fine.
Yeah, Annie's got a good point. One of her thoughts when she was looking at this is that it was written by men worldwide. Would you advocate a different split in the sentence, and would you follow the curvature in the top half of the element?
Yeah, I forgot to say that I thought that too, and especially because Tulu 2 is the name, which you would not immediately recognize as a name. You could be mistakenly thinking that this is some sort of like compilation of thoughts from men worldwide. So I would at least maybe put by Tulu 2 also. But yeah, probably you could split it up differently. The left-hand side rides so high up on the shoulder, I guess I'll say, that you could safely, change the split and not lose anything. I don't think. It's just something you have to play with.
Yeah, I definitely like the cleverness of the outstanding image. Right, it definitely grabs you and takes you from there. So, but I think some work with the font and the title and the author name could and maybe framing could improve it.
Also,
right,
one
let's
last
take a look.
thing,
Mhm.
one
Yes.
super fast. That the kind of handwritten font at the top, which is probably I would have to examine, but not actually handwritten.
Right.
But that works really well for this. And then the bottom title, by contrast, is so kind of vanilla that I think it would just look better if you had the same kind of handwritten style at the bottom too. I think it would be more unified. But that's
Okay.
me.
Yeah. Okay. Here's another one by Tulu. And again, now at this point, I'm wondering if it's Tulu squared. So just having never spoken with her, I don't actually know how she pronounces her name. But oops, then you're dead. My primary concern about this is that there's no border whatsoever, and that could be a very deliberate choice. But whenever this image for this book is placed on a white background, like a computer screen, it has the potential to be lost on the page. And then my other concern is, and it could be because I blew this up so we could look at it on the screen, I've got a lot of artifacting and jaggies around the fonts and image on this page.
Mm-hmm.
So I would be worried about that when I went to print, or I'd have to look at it and see how it really worked out on the Amazon page. But it just looks dirty, or it looks a little unpolished, unfinished.
I did it on the. I went to the Amazon page, yeah, and I looked on Kindle for PC, and it is like even more so very heavily artifacted. Like it looks like this was done in whatever image processing program, and then just kind of stretched to fill the page as best it can, which is not vector elements, and you can see it.
So there's an important point here for authors, which is when you're going to work with do-it-yourself, or when you're going to work with a designer, first of all, they've got to know the pixel dimensions that you're trying to fill. If they're not using vector graphics, vector fonts, or whatever the right term is, then they want to fill to the max space so that later it can be shrunk. It's very hard to zoom in and drag something out and blow it up and have it look good. It's easier to shrink it and have it look okay. Yeah. And where possible, use professional fonts and professional vector-based imagery so that when it does get moved around, you don't get these jaggies that we're looking at. But a lot of that is you've got to specify that when you have to think about it or specify that when you're working with your designer, because they have to know, look, this is going to be on print on demand. This is going to be a print cover. This is going to be potentially on the Amazon shopping page. All right, let's see what we've got left here. Okay, this is actually, I'm not certain why Sandrine sent me two, but I think it's interesting. Here's the first version, Hello the Unknown, and probably my primary comment is when I strip the text, I'm not certain what's going on, what the book is about. I'm thinking it's literary fiction of some kind. For me, the color palette, I like the choice. I like the shininess and the gold text in the top, and the color palette seems to me one that you don't often see in a book, so it stands out to me. The dandelions are a little indistinct, but I think they're very interesting. And I want to get your comment, Chris. But for now, I want to jump to the next version, which tells me something completely different about this book. So here's the let's go back one. Here's the next version. Hello the Unknown. Completely different. A woman in high heels on one track of a train track with a flower. I'm not a botanist and can't tell you what kind is left behind. Now I'm thinking this book is a romance book. It might even be an erotic romance book. Those are some pretty tall heels with some studs on the back of them. And how would you be doing the balance beam on a train track? Why would you be wearing those heels on a train track? It asks lots of questions that are asking me to pick up this book and flip it over to the back, or to read the description, or to learn more about it. So I don't know why. I assumed maybe she sent me both because she wanted the opinion, or she wanted to show the difference between the two. But so let's go back to the first one. What do you think, Chris, about this first one versus that second one?
Yeah, this looks like, right, that she hired a designer and they've given her multiple mock-ups and she's to choose.
Yeah. Yeah.
I like the first one far better.
Yeah.
I like the typography better. I like the whole composition of it better. It really does, I guess, depend on what kind of book it is. If it's literary fiction, it's a no-brainer that you need to just go with that first one. I think it's done. I think it's good. I love the texture of it, the colors. I'm into that cover. If it's more genre fiction, then the second one might be the right choice, though I think it's Coppergate Gothic for the title. I'm not a fan of myself. I think you have better ones available to you, but that the image, communicates some things that might be better if it for a genre fiction book, depending on what it is. Basically, I can't say in a vacuum.
Right.
But my instinct is I like the first one a lot better myself.
Yeah, so I think, and Sandrine hasn't replied, so she may not be online right now. But I think there's definitely a question about what the context of the book is. But both of them seem to have been as though they had a professional hand at getting them put together. But I agree with your point about the Gothic font or the whatever that is on this version for the title.
It just looks like the first one has some more love to it. I think like there's more care shown to the type. I don't know. It's hard to. It's just an instinct, I guess. But I think a lot of times you will find that, if you hire a cover designer and you agree to, let's say, 3 mock-ups, they're going to kind of, they'll be into one way more than the others, right? They're going to do one and then say, oh, I just spent 5 hours on this. Let me spend an hour on these second 2 to give you other options.
Yeah, right. I know which one I love, and you'll probably love the one I love too because it looks better. Okay. Oops. We're getting close to the end. Okay. Max Eastone, 1 minute there. Now, Max actually has several books out, and I think this is a suspense romance. But in any case, so I think the image is interesting. Although for me, you've got the binocular effect or the monocular effect, and but no crosshairs, so it's not a spy thriller or a sniper movie a sniper book about World War II. But the image I think is interesting, but it's not. I sort of bounce off it pretty quick because I don't see anything really arresting going on there. It's a nice image, but it's not. It doesn't hold me. I'm a little bit worried about the fuzziness, and I assume it's in the cover and not the image of it that we have. And I again also assume that the fuzziness comes from the effect of putting it through a telescope lens or a monocular lens.
Yeah, you know what it is? It's a flashlight lighting effect in Photoshop is what it's called.
Ah, okay. Yep. So what could we do to what suggestions would you have to improve this cover? What do you like about it to start with?
For me, I like the type and the way it's laid out. I think it's bold, and kind of works well with how it's framed in terms of 1 minute there, kind of being blocked off. I think that's working for it. I think it has a nice, just clearly what they're going for, a nice kind of vintagey right feel, mysterious in a way. I think that's good. I think that you're dead on that. The image is pretty, like the whole thing looks professional, but doesn't look particularly arresting or doesn't really tell me a whole lot about what I can expect to see in the book. Kind of think that it seems like a situation where they were looking for, a stock photo that fit their needs and ran with it.
The first time I saw it, I zoomed in. I was wondering, what is that sort of cable-y thing in the middle? And I wondered maybe there's a pair of shoes or baby shoes or a tattered flag or, I wonder what that apparatus is in the middle. And so I zoomed in real close to look at it. It's just a street light, and it's kind of warped by either by the angle of the picture or they flattened it or something. But so again, nothing in the picture itself that stands out and just grabs me and says, take a closer look, I think. I mean, if I hadn't been curious enough that we were going to comment on it, I would never have zoomed in and looked real hard because there's nothing here. And part of it for me is the palette, the color palette, almost sepia palette of this thing, it's not stopping it. It's not stopping my eye. Okay.
Yeah, it's washed out.
Yeah. Okay, next one, how God helps those who help themselves. I'm going to assume that this is the front cover, not the front cover plus the spine. Actually, let's take that back. Let's assume that this is the front cover plus the spine, because it should be, right? If it's not,
yes.
If they've got that thing on the left and that's not the spine, I would recommend changing it and making it the spine. I would also question the utility of placing an HTTPS link on the bottom of the book. I think that space could be better used for something else. If I already have the print version of the book, then I don't need that link. And if I'm looking at the ebook version of it, I probably don't need that link either. So that link is not doing anything for me. I do like how Grant's author name stands out on the lightest part of the cloud. I definitely like how the subtitle is readable, and I imagine that even if you shrink this cover to Amazon thumbnail size, the title itself will still be readable, even though Grant's name may not be.
Agreed.
And pretty good image. At first I thought it was a guy hanging out of a helicopter, but it's not. It looks to me more like it's a climber.
Rock climbing.
Yeah, and although, you know, if you really reflect on the image, this actually could be an image of someone who just got let go, and so it would actually be a tragedy in the making rather than a climber helping another climber up. I don't climb, but it's hard for me to imagine that this would be a valid way to help another climber.
That's a good point.
I mean, I don't know. I could be completely wrong, but as an image, if you start to overanalyze it like I'm doing, now I got questions. What do you think, Chris? What would you do to improve it?
Okay, well, I would definitely. What I like about it, I like that it's super readable. We'll be at the small size too. You know, I kind of get what's going on right away. Would it echo that take that create space link off? Definitely, no question. That would be a suggestion. On the spine, it's a tiny thing, but I don't think you need to have the M- between the title and the author name. It's just kind of like not conventional. You could just make the font for Grant Gillard a little bit smaller, or put it in small caps or something to kind of set them apart. I don't know. It's not a big deal, but I just think it's a little more pleasing. Otherwise, yeah, I like it overall. You're right. I guess it could be like dropping somebody. I didn't even think about that. But yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, and Grant chimed in and he said that yes, this is absolutely the spine plus the cover, and he said that the create space link is positively not part of the cover. He just happened to grab this image because it was of use for him for his marketing efforts on Pinterest. So that's
okay,
good to know.
Makes sense.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. Thanks, Grant. We appreciate that clarification. So I think overall good, and I like, by the way, I like the color palette for it as well for the book. Okay, let's look at the next one. Okay, Color My World. My biggest worry about this one is that it could be that this style of illustration is intentional for the book. Or it could be that this is the author or a family member or a friend working to illustrate the front cover who is just getting started with that skill and that craft. I'm worried that it's the second rather than the first. I especially worry that you could positively do a better job with the author name, the illustrator name, if it were professionally designed. What could you suggest to improve this cover?
Yeah, gosh, I would love to know what the book is, right? That would make all the difference in the world. But you can, you're having the illustrator name.
It's a coloring book, by the way. I looked it up. I think it's a coloring book.
That's what I would guess. The illustrator name especially and the bottom right gets lost, like even more so than the author name because of having the Y marker, B marker, stuff on it, which I don't think you need, unless I'm misunderstanding. They might have some utility I don't know about, but it seems like if you just have the crowns, it would be fine without the text on them. But if you are going to do like this super colorful kind of crown-based thing, I think you would get a lot of mileage out of having those colors be like way more vibrant. It's just pale, you know, like
it's pale.
You don't normally get to kind of have a full rainbow of colors on there and it had be a good idea, but you do, so you might as well just run with it, just make it super bright and colorful.
Yeah, when I think about coloring books that I've seen in the store, you know, the front cover of that coloring book is super bright colors that you'd never achieve with crayons, but it doesn't matter because it's an aspirational cover. One other minor thing, and I could be wrong, is crayon a brand name or is it a generic? In other words, can I get away with using that word on my cover?
That's a good question. I don't know.
That's worth checking out. Because I think you got to be careful not to use brand without permission. Anything else you'd recommend other than pumping up well, we obviously got typography issues with the author and illustrator name, and pumping up the color saturation. What else would you do?
Well, just two things, even more so than just the saturation. And this might be in progress, but I think there's just too much white in general. Like the crown box is also white. There's white in the hands and the palette, the paint palette, and all that. And then maybe it's just in progress. I don't know. But you could probably have color in all of it. But also, just because you're doing a kind of crown-based image that's very hand-drawn doesn't mean you can't still do that and then have, for instance, the Color My World part be in an actual, computer, which might be something to play with, and have your author names and all that stuff. So you can have a mix of the two. Could be really arresting because then you'll still get that message of professional book cover.
Yep. We definitely need some framing, I think. I think that's a good point as well. It's you got a lot of white, and it's going to bleed off into the page unless you do something about the framing. Okay. All right, this, I believe, is the last image that we have. This is from Bonnie. She's probably doing some image exploration. The title of the book is Carrie.
Yeah.
So I think that if the title of your book is Carrie, with what that might imply, although I think you got to be careful there, this might be a pretty good image to get started with. Probably my biggest concern about the image is that, and again, this could be my fault for blowing it up, but I believe it's too grainy.
Well, it's Chloe Moretz, the actress who plays Carrie in the new Carrie movie. I don't think you'll be able to get away with having her picture on the cover of your book, to be frank. Yep. Okay.
That's
the screen grab.
Yeah, so this could be I'm starting to explore the kind of images and what I'm looking for, and I'd like, I can't have Robin Williams anymore, but so give me something like Robin Williams. All right, so I think that's it. That is it. I got one blank page in case we got any last-minute submissions. And again, if you would like the slides, especially with that creative brief in the third slide, those goals, I'm happy to send them to you. Chris, thank you so much for your time. Everybody, thank you for staying late. For those that did, I hope we gave you good feedback on your books. And if you'd like for us to do this again and maybe get your book up there, send me an email and we'll throw this in rotation. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Chris.
No, thank you, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Everybody, have a great day.
Bye-bye.